My name is Elaine Mitchell, and I never imagined my sister Vanessa would publicly humiliate me during a job interview at Armstrong Media. When she tossed my resume in the trash and declared I wasn't qualified, I felt my world crumbling. But everything changed when Gabriel Harrison walked into that conference room, kissed my cheek, and called me his fiancé. The look on Vanessa's face was priceless when she realized her new CEO was my future husband. Before I tell you how I became the newest senior content strategist, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever witnessed workplace karma deliver perfect justice in a family drama. Growing up as the younger sister to Vanessa Mitchell was like living in a perpetual shadow. For years my senior, Vanessa established herself as the golden child of our family from an early age. While most siblings have moments of competition mixed with camaraderie, our relationship always tilted heavily toward rivalry, fueled by Vanessa's determination to maintain her superior status. Mom, look at my report card. All A's again, Vanessa would announce at dinner, while my parents beamed with pride. Meanwhile, my B+ in English might receive a cursory, "That's nice, honey," before the conversation returned to Vanessa's achievements. Even when we played board games as children, Vanessa couldn't bear to lose. I remember a particularly painful Christmas when I was 9 and finally won at Monopoly. Vanessa, 13 at the time, accused me of cheating, flipped the board, and didn't speak to me for 3 days. My parents told me I should have let her win because you know how she gets. This pattern continued through high school. Vanessa was class president, valedictorian, and captain of the debate team. When I joined the school newspaper and won a regional award for feature writing, Vanessa somehow made it about her. "The judges probably recognized your last name because of me," she said at the dinner table. "I paved the way for you." My parents, both successful corporate attorneys, clearly favored Vanessa's traditional academic prowess over my more creative inclinations. When college application time came around, they spared no expense for Vanessa's Ivy League education but questioned whether my artsy degree was worth the investment. "Journalism isn't practical, Elaine," my father would say. "Look at your sister studying economics. That's a real future." Unlike Vanessa, who sailed through her education on our parents' dime, I cobbled together scholarships, part-time jobs, and student loans to earn my communications degree with a minor in digital media. While working as a barista at 5 a.m. and taking evening classes, I watched Vanessa's Facebook updates from business leadership retreats and networking galas. Despite the challenges, I graduated with honors and immediately found work at a small digital marketing agency. I loved the creative aspects of content creation, the strategy behind engagement metrics, and the tangible results of successful campaigns. Over 6 years, I worked my way up from junior copywriter to content manager, building a solid portfolio of successful projects for various clients. Then came the layoffs. Our agency lost 2 major accounts in the same month, and as one of the newer managers, I found myself suddenly unemployed. The timing couldn't have been worse, with my apartment lease renewal coming up and student loan payments that never seemed to decrease. It was during this low point, drowning my sorrows in an overpriced latte I couldn't really afford, that I met Gabriel Harrison. "Mind if I share this table?" he asked, gesturing to the empty seat across from me. The coffee shop was packed with remote workers, and I nodded absently, too busy revising my resume to pay much attention. "Tough day?" he asked after a few minutes of silence. Something about his gentle tone made me look up. Gabriel wasn't what you'd call conventionally handsome, but he had kind eyes behind stylish glasses and a genuine smile that immediately put me at ease. "Tough month," I admitted. "Just got laid off and trying to figure out my next move." Instead of offering platitudes, Gabriel asked thoughtful questions about my work. He seemed genuinely interested in my perspectives on digital engagement strategies and content innovation. For the first time in weeks, I felt valued for my professional insights rather than pitted for my unemployment. 3 hours later, we were still talking, having moved from work topics to books, travel, and our shared love of documentaries. When he finally had to leave for a meeting, he asked for my number. Our relationship developed naturally over the following months. Gabriel never made me feel inadequate for my career struggles. unlike my family who viewed unemployment as some sort of moral failing. He respected my determination to find a position on my own merits, offering connections only when I specifically asked for them. What I didn't know during those early dating months was that Gabriel was rapidly ascending the corporate ladder at Armstrong Media, one of the largest digital content companies in the region. When he was promoted to CEO, he downplayed it modestly, telling me over dinner as if mentioning a small raise. "Wait," I remember saying, nearly choking on my water. "You're the CEO? Of the entire company?" "As of Monday," he confirmed with that same humble smile. "But enough about that. Tell me more about the freelance project you mentioned." That was Gabriel, genuinely more interested in my small wins than his major career milestone. After a year of dating, his proposal was similarly understated, but perfect. No grand public gesture, just a sincere question during a weekend hike to our favorite overlook. We agreed to keep our engagement relatively quiet at first, wanting to enjoy it privately before the inevitable family opinions started flooding in. My parents would certainly have questions about Gabriel's background, education, and career, measuring him against their exacting standards. And Vanessa, well, Vanessa would find some way to make it about her. Speaking of my sister, Vanessa's career had taken a predictably stellar trajectory. After graduating with honors, she landed a position at a prestigious consulting firm, then jumped to a Fortune 500 company in their executive development program. Every family gathering became another opportunity for her to casually drop references to her corner office, important meetings, or impressive salary. "The company just gave me a car allowance on top of my bonus," she mentioned during Thanksgiving dinner, eyeing me as I helped Mom with the dishes. "But I'm sure things will turn around for you soon, Elaine. There's always demand for, what is it you do again? Social media posts." What Vanessa didn't know, what none of my family knew yet, was that Gabriel was now a prominent figure in the digital media world. We had decided not to correct their assumptions that he worked in tech in some vague capacity. Let them underestimate us both. It was nothing new. When Vanessa announced her latest career move at Christmas, I congratulated her sincerely. "HR director at Armstrong Media? That sounds perfect for you." She smiled condescendingly. "It's a senior leadership position. I doubt you'd understand the scope, but I'll be overseeing all personnel decisions for the entire company." If only she knew that the CEO of Armstrong Media had helped me pick out her Christmas gift. 3 months into my job search, discouragement was becoming my constant companion. Despite tailoring applications for dozens of content strategy positions, I'd only secured a handful of interviews, all ending with some version of, "We went with a candidate whose experience better fits our needs." My savings were dwindling rapidly. I'd already downgraded my phone plan, canceled streaming subscriptions, and started selling clothes online. Pride was becoming a luxury I couldn't afford. One evening, while cooking a budget pasta dinner in my apartment, I vented my frustrations to Gabriel over the phone. "I just don't understand what I'm doing wrong," I sighed, stirring the sauce more aggressively than necessary. "I meet all the qualifications, have solid recommendations, my portfolio is strong, but nothing." "Have you considered Armstrong?" Gabriel asked carefully. "We actually have an opening in the content strategy department that would be perfect for your background." The suggestion hung in the air as I considered the complications. Wouldn't that be nepotism? I don't want special treatment. "It would only be nepotism if I hired you because of our relationship," Gabriel explained. "But our HR processes are designed specifically to prevent that. I wouldn't be involved in your hiring at all." We discussed the ethical implications for nearly an hour. Gabriel emphasized that Armstrong was genuinely seeking someone with my exact skill set, and that I'd be doing myself a disservice by not applying. We finally agreed that I would submit my application through normal channels, with no mention of our relationship. If I got hired, we would disclose our engagement after the fact, following company protocols for personal relationships. "The position reports to the content director, Natalie Chen," Gabriel assured me. "She reports to the COO, not directly to me. There would be no conflict of interest in the reporting structure." With Gabriel's encouragement, but not his help, I threw myself into researching Armstrong Media thoroughly. I studied their recent campaigns, identified areas where my expertise could add value, and crafted a customized resume and cover letter highlighting relevant experience. The initial response came quickly, an email requesting a phone screening with Riley Thomas from HR. The conversation went surprisingly well, with Riley asking insightful questions about my approach to content strategy and seeming genuinely impressed with my answers. "Your portfolio shows exactly the kind of innovative thinking we're looking for," Riley said near the end of our call. "I'm definitely recommending you for an in-person interview with the team." The validation felt wonderful after months of rejection. When I shared the news with Gabriel that evening, he was genuinely excited but careful not to offer inside information. "That's fantastic. Riley has a great eye for talent," he said, hugging me. "I'm in back-to-back meetings all day on your interview date, but text me afterward to let me know how it goes." As the interview approached, I prepared meticulously, researching Armstrong's competitors, developing ideas for potential campaigns, and practicing answers to likely questions. Gabriel maintained a respectful distance from my preparation, offering general encouragement but no specific advice about the position or interview panel. The morning of the interview, I woke early, too nervous to sleep. I dressed in my most professional outfit, a navy blue suit that had stretched my credit card the previous year, but was worth every penny for the confidence it gave me. Gabriel had already left for an early meeting, but he'd left a sweet note wishing me luck. Armstrong Media's headquarters occupied the top floors of a gleaming downtown tower. The reception area featured sleek modern furniture, award trophies displayed tastefully in glass cases, and a wall of screens showcasing the company's digital content. "Good morning," I greeted the receptionist with what I hoped was a confident smile. "I'm Elaine Mitchell, here for an interview with the content strategy team." The young woman, whose nameplate read Olivia, smiled warmly. "Of course, Ms. Mitchell. Please have a seat. I'll let them know you're here." As I waited, I reviewed my portfolio one last time, taking deep breaths to calm my nerves. From a nearby conference room, I heard a familiar laugh that made my stomach drop. No, it couldn't be. But as the door opened and a group of executives exited, I caught a glimpse of my sister's distinctive blonde bob. Before I could process this unexpected complication, Olivia approached. "They're ready for you now. Conference room B, just down that hallway." With a sense of mounting dread, I gathered my materials and walked toward what was beginning to feel like a trap rather than an opportunity. When the conference room door opened, my worst fears materialized. There sat Vanessa at the head of the table, her expression shifting from professional readiness to shock, then quickly to a composed mask as our eyes met. "Elaine," she said coolly, recovering faster than I could. "What an interesting coincidence." Two other interviewers flanked her, a man with salt and pepper hair introduced as Marcus Reynolds, creative director, and a woman with a stylish pixie cut named Sophia Wu, senior content manager. Both looked between Vanessa and me with curious expressions. "You two know each other?" Sophia asked. "We're sisters, actually," Vanessa answered before I could speak. A surprise to me as well. I wasn't involved in the resume screening process. Her tone implied this oversight was someone else's failure. "Should we reschedule with a different HR representative?" Marcus asked, looking uncomfortable. "That won't be necessary," Vanessa said firmly. "I can conduct this interview with complete objectivity. Shall we begin?" With no graceful way to object, I took the seat across from her, acutely aware of how this power dynamic played directly into our lifelong pattern. Once again, Vanessa was the gatekeeper to my opportunities. The interview began conventionally enough. Marcus asked about my previous experience leading content teams, while Sophia inquired about my familiarity with Armstrong's brand voice. I answered carefully, making eye contact with each interviewer and trying to ignore the way Vanessa scrutinized my every word. "Your portfolio shows experience with small businesses and startups," Vanessa interjected after I described a successful campaign. "Armstrong Media operates at an entirely different scale. What makes you think you could handle our enterprise-level clients?" The challenging tone was subtle enough that Marcus and Sophia might not notice, but I recognized it immediately. The same voice she used when questioning my college choice or career path at family gatherings. Actually, my last position included managing content strategy for Vertex Technologies, which serves over 50 Fortune 1000 clients. I responded evenly. I led the team that increased their engagement metrics by 47% year-over-year through targeted enterprise content initiatives. Marcus nodded approvingly, but Vanessa was already moving to her next point of attack. I notice a 3-month gap in your employment. Can you explain that? Her pen hovered over my resume, emphasizing the gap as if it were a criminal record. As I mentioned in my cover letter, my previous company underwent significant downsizing after losing major accounts. I've been actively freelancing and upskilling while searching for the right permanent position. I maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. The interview continued in this vein for nearly 30 minutes. With each question, Vanessa's tone grew more dismissive, her skepticism more pronounced. Marcus and Sophia exchanged uncomfortable glances as the tension in the room became palpable. Your content samples seem very basic, Vanessa commented, flipping through my portfolio with barely concealed disdain. We're looking for innovative approaches, not templated social media posts. This blatant mischaracterization of my work, which included award-winning campaigns and highly customized content strategies, was the first comment that made my professional composure waver. Those aren't templates, I corrected, keeping my voice steady. Each strategy was custom-developed based on client analytics and audience research. The Riverstone campaign you're looking at increased conversion rates by 215% and was recognized by the Digital Marketing Association last year. Sophia leaned forward with interest. That was your campaign? I remember when that went viral. The approach was brilliant. Vanessa's expression tightened at Sophia's praise. A viral moment doesn't necessarily translate to sustainable content strategy for global brands. The metrics in my portfolio show 6-month and 1-year results, not just initial spikes, I countered, pointing to the relevant data. Sustainability was actually the core principle of each approach. Marcus asked a follow-up question about my methodology, and as I explained my process, I could see Vanessa growing increasingly agitated. She began interrupting more frequently, questioning basic industry terms as if testing whether I actually understood them, and sighing audibly at my responses. The breaking point came when Marcus asked about my vision for Armstrong's content evolution. I believe Armstrong has a unique opportunity to. I began. Let's be honest here. Vanessa cut in, pushing her chair back slightly. You've worked for small agencies and handled minor accounts. Armstrong is the industry leader. We need someone with proven experience at this level. She picked up my resume, holding it between 2 fingers as if it might contaminate her. You're not even qualified for this position. With a dismissive flick, she tossed my resume toward the trash can in the corner of the room. It hit the rim and fell in. The room fell silent. Marcus stared at Vanessa in shock, while Sophia's mouth actually dropped open. I sat frozen, a lifetime of similar humiliations at my sister's hands playing through my mind like a tragic highlight reel. In that moment, I had to make a decision, retreat into the familiar pattern of accepting Vanessa's judgment, or stand my ground professionally despite our personal history. Before I could speak, however, the conference room door opened. Gabriel Harrison walked into the conference room with the confident posture of someone who belonged there, glancing down at his tablet before looking up at the interview panel. His eyes widened slightly as he took in the scene. Vanessa sitting rigidly at the head of the table, Marcus and Sophia looking deeply uncomfortable, and me, sitting across from them all with what must have been a stunned expression. I apologize for interrupting, Gabriel said smoothly. I had this time blocked to sit in on the content strategist interviews. His eyes met mine, and I saw momentary confusion followed by understanding flash across his face. Vanessa immediately shifted into a different persona, her voice rising half an octave as she adopted the deferential tone she reserved for those she needed to impress. Mr. Harrison.
We weren't expecting you.
I was just explaining to the candidate why her experience isn't quite aligned with our needs. She gestured dismissively toward me without actually making eye contact. Gabriel's expression remained neutral as he walked further into the room, stopping directly beside my chair. In a move that seemed completely natural to him but must have appeared shocking to everyone else, he placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and leaned down to kiss my cheek. "Elaine, I didn't realize your interview was today," he said warmly, before looking up at the panel. "I see you've all met my fiancé." The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Vanessa's face drained of color so dramatically, I briefly worried she might faint. Her mouth opened and closed silently, resembling a fish suddenly removed from water. "Your fiancé," she finally managed, her voice a strained whisper. Marcus and Sophia looked equally shocked, though their expressions held more curiosity than horror. "Yes," Gabriel confirmed casually, as if this were the most normal situation in the world. "Though I've been careful to stay completely out of the hiring process for ethical reasons." He turned to me with a questioning look. "I take it you two know each other?" Before I could answer, Vanessa found her voice. "She's my sister," she said flatly, her professional mask crumbling entirely. Gabriel's eyebrows shot up in genuine surprise. "Your sister? You're Vanessa Mitchell?" He looked between us, clearly connecting dots. "Elaine mentioned her sister worked in HR, but I had no idea it was at Armstrong. I don't believe we've formally met yet. I've been traveling since your onboarding." The awkward silence that followed was excruciating. Marcus cleared his throat, and Sophia suddenly became very interested in her notepad. Gabriel, ever the professional, quickly took control of the situation. "Given this unexpected connection, I think we should pause this interview and reconvene with a different panel. Marcus, would you please call Thomas Reeves from HR to join us? I believe he's the appropriate person to handle this situation." Marcus nodded gratefully and stepped out to make the call. Vanessa remained frozen in her seat, her expression cycling through shock, embarrassment, and what looked like dawning horror as the professional implications began to sink in. In the meantime, Gabriel continued calmly, "Perhaps Sophia could show Elaine to the break room while we sort this out?" Sophia jumped up as if relieved to have a reason to leave. "Of course. This way, Elaine." As I gathered my portfolio and followed Sophia, I caught a glimpse of Vanessa's face. For the first time in our adult lives, she looked at me without a trace of condescension, only fear and confusion. In the break room, Sophia offered me coffee with a sympathetic smile. That was intense. I've never seen anything like it in an interview. "I'm so sorry about the awkwardness," I said sincerely. "I had no idea my sister worked here, let alone that she'd be on the interview panel. And clearly she had no idea about your relationship with Gabriel," Sophia added, looking both uncomfortable and intrigued. "How long have you two been together?" "A little over a year. Engaged for 3 months." I twisted my engagement ring, which I'd turned inward during the interview out of habit. "We've been keeping it relatively quiet." "Well, it's certainly not quiet anymore," Sophia observed with a small laugh. Before long, Gabriel joined us in the break room, his expression apologetic. "Elaine, I'm so sorry about this situation. If I'd had any idea Vanessa was your sister, I would have made sure you interviewed with a completely different team." "It's not your fault," I assured him. "We never use last names when talking about my family, and I had no idea she was working at Armstrong." "Thomas is arranging for a new interview panel with Senior HR Manager Charlotte Davis," Gabriel explained. "They can meet with you tomorrow, if that works with your schedule?" I nodded, still processing the morning's events. "What about Vanessa? I don't want to cause problems for her professionally." Gabriel's expression turned serious. "There are protocols for handling conflicts of interest, which weren't followed here. Thomas will address that separately. But throwing a candidate's resume in the trash is unacceptable behavior from any HR professional, regardless of personal connections." A soft knock interrupted us, and Thomas Reeves, a dignified man in his 50s, entered with Laura Chin, the chief operating officer. They both introduced themselves warmly. "Ms. Mitchell, we'd like to sincerely apologize for your experience today," Thomas said. "What happened was unprofessional and doesn't reflect our company's values or hiring practices." Laura nodded in agreement. "We'd like to offer you a fresh interview with a neutral panel tomorrow morning. Gabriel will recuse himself entirely from the decision-making process to maintain the integrity of our hiring practices." I appreciated their professionalism and agreed to return the next day. As the meeting concluded, Gabriel walked me to the elevator, maintaining a respectful professional distance now that we were in the company atrium. "I'll see you at home later," he said quietly. "We have a lot to talk about." As the elevator doors closed, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "We need to talk."
Now.
By the time I reached the lobby, my phone had exploded with notifications. 3 more texts from Vanessa, each more demanding than the last, followed by a string of messages from our parents. Vanessa just called crying. "What's going on? Why didn't you tell us you were engaged? Who is this man? Where did you meet him? Call us immediately." I silenced my phone and stepped outside, needing a moment to breathe before dealing with a family storm. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of being the family disappointment, I was suddenly the center of attention because of my relationship with someone successful. Back in my apartment, I called Gabriel to strategize before facing my family. "How are you holding up?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "Still processing," I admitted. Part of me feels vindicated after years of Vanessa's condescension, but another part feels guilty for the professional embarrassment this might cause her. "You have nothing to feel guilty about," Gabriel reassured me. "You applied for a position you're qualified for through proper channels. The failure was in Armstrong's process for identifying conflicts of interest before interviews occur." "What's happening with Vanessa?" I asked hesitantly. "I can't discuss specific HR matters," Gabriel said carefully, "but I can tell you that Thomas is handling the situation according to company policy. Any employee would face consequences for that kind of unprofessional behavior during an interview. We discussed how to handle my family's questions, agreeing that transparency was now the only option. Gabriel offered to join me for any family conversations, but we both recognized that I needed to speak with Vanessa alone first. "Just remember that you've done nothing wrong," Gabriel said before we hung up. "This situation isn't your fault." After ending the call, I texted Vanessa, "I'll come to your place at 7. Just us." Her reply was immediate.
Phoenix.
The drive to Vanessa's upscale apartment complex gave me time to organize my thoughts. As I parked, I reminded myself that despite our history, this conversation needed to focus on moving forward constructively. Vanessa opened the door without greeting me. Her makeup was immaculate as always, but her eyes were rimmed with red, and she clutched a glass of wine that didn't appear to be her first of the evening. "Were you trying to humiliate me?" she demanded before I'd even fully entered her apartment. Was this whole thing some elaborate setup for revenge?
What? No.
I closed the door behind me, already defensive. "I had no idea you worked at Armstrong." Gabriel and I agreed I should apply through regular channels without using our relationship. "The position matches my qualifications perfectly." "Right," Vanessa scoffed, pacing her living room. "So, it's just a massive coincidence that you're engaged to my boss? Do you have any idea how this makes me look?" "About as bad as you made me look when you threw my resume in the trash," I countered, struggling to maintain my composure. "What was that about, Vanessa? Professional HR directors don't behave that way." She stopped pacing, her expression flickering between anger and something that looked surprisingly like shame. "I panicked, okay? Seeing you there was shocking, and then watching Marcus and Sophia respond positively to your answers. I just reacted. By publicly humiliating me? That's been your go-to move since we were kids." The words came out before I could stop them, decades of suppressed feelings rushing to the surface. "What are you talking about?" Vanessa demanded, though her tone lacked its usual conviction. "Really? You don't remember constantly putting me down in front of our parents? Making sure everyone knew you were the successful one while I was just the creative disappointment? The time you told my college boyfriend I wasn't ambitious enough for him, and he broke up with me the next day." Vanessa sank onto her pristine white couch, staring into her wine glass. "I didn't think you'd end up interviewing at Armstrong. When Riley forwarded your resume, I should have recused myself. But what? But I was afraid," she admitted quietly. "Afraid you'd get the job and everyone would realize you're just as capable as I am. Maybe more so." Her words hung in the air between us. In all our years of rivalry, Vanessa had never once acknowledged seeing me as a legitimate competitor. You've been threatened by me? I asked incredulously. You're the one who's always had everything, the grades, the prestigious jobs, our parents' approval. Vanessa laughed bitterly. Their approval comes with conditions, Elaine. One mistake, one failure, and it disappears. You've always had the freedom to pursue what you actually wanted. She looked up at me, vulnerability replacing her usual mask of superiority. And now you're engaged to a CEO while dating some guy in tech. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel? For the first time, I glimpsed the insecurity beneath my sister's perfect facade, the constant pressure to maintain appearances, the fear of failure that drove her relentless ambition and competitive nature. We never told anyone Gabriel was a CEO because we wanted privacy, I explained more gently. It wasn't about deceiving you or setting up some grand revelation. Well, the revelation certainly happened, Vanessa said, finishing her wine. Thomas has placed me on administrative leave pending an ethics review. I could lose my job, Elaine. A job I worked incredibly hard to get. Despite years of resentment, I felt genuine concern for my sister. I never wanted that, Vanessa. Gabriel assured me he's keeping his distance from any decisions about your situation. It doesn't matter. The damage is done. She set down her glass. Mom and Dad are freaking out, by the way, demanding to know why you kept your engagement secret and wanting all the details about Gabriel. I'll call them tomorrow, I promised. But Vanessa, we need to address what happened between us. Not just today, but our entire relationship. This competitive dynamic isn't healthy for either of us. My sister looked exhausted suddenly, the polished professional veneer completely gone. I don't even know how to have a different kind of relationship with you. Competition is all we've ever known. As painful as the conversation was, it felt like the first honest exchange we'd had in our adult lives. We talked for hours, unpacking decades of rivalry, misunderstandings, and the parental pressures that had pitted us against each other from childhood. By the time I left Vanessa's apartment, nothing was resolved, but something had shifted. The carefully constructed walls between us had developed the first small cracks, allowing glimpses of the sisters we might have been under different circumstances. Meanwhile, at Armstrong Media, the ethics investigation proceeded according to company protocols. Gabriel maintained appropriate professional distance, focusing on his CEO responsibilities while Thomas and the HR team handled the situation. Despite my concerns for Vanessa, I couldn't help feeling a sense of validation, knowing that for once, her actions toward me would have consequences beyond our personal relationship. The next morning, I arrived at Armstrong Media for my rescheduled interview with mixed emotions. While professionally excited about the opportunity, I couldn't shake my concern about how this situation would affect both Vanessa's career and our fragile new understanding. The reception area felt different this time. Olivia greeted me with a warm smile that held a hint of recognition, as if she now knew exactly who I was. Instead of waiting nervously, I was immediately escorted to a different conference room where Charlotte Davis, the senior HR manager, waited with Laura Chen and two content team leaders I hadn't met previously. Thank you for returning, Ms. Mitchell, Charlotte began with a genuine smile. We want to assure you that today's interview will focus solely on your qualifications for the content strategist position. The interview that followed was rigorous but fair. Charlotte asked thoughtful questions about my experience managing content teams, while Laura probed my strategic thinking with complex scenario questions. The content team leaders, Jasmine and Derek, discussed technical aspects of content optimization and requested my analysis of Armstrong's current digital presence. Unlike the previous day's tension-filled disaster, this interview flowed naturally. When asked about my approach to enterprise-level content strategy, I walked them through a detailed methodology I developed, using my portfolio to illustrate successful implementations. We'd like you to complete a practical assessment, Charlotte explained, sliding a tablet toward me. This is a sample project brief for a hypothetical client. Could you outline your approach to developing a comprehensive content strategy based on these parameters? The exercise was challenging but energizing, exactly the kind of strategic thinking I enjoyed. For 30 minutes, I worked through the brief, developing a multi-channel content approach that aligned with the client's objectives while pushing creative boundaries. When I presented my solution to the panel, Jasmine nodded appreciatively. Your approach integrates traditional content formats with emerging platforms in a way that feels cohesive rather than fragmented. That's exactly what we need in this role. By the end of the 3-hour interview, I felt confident that I demonstrated my capabilities fairly. As we concluded, Laura addressed the elephant in the room. Elaine, we want to be transparent about how your relationship with Gabriel would work within our organizational structure. The content strategist position reports to Natalie Chen, our content director, who reports directly to me, not to Gabriel. We have clear policies about personal relationships to ensure no conflicts of interest arise. I appreciate the transparency, I responded. Professional boundaries are important to both Gabriel and me. Charlotte walked me out, assuring me they would be in touch soon with their decision. As I left the building, I felt a weight lifting. Regardless of the outcome, I had been evaluated fairly on my professional merits. 3 days later, the call came. I was offered the position of Senior Content Strategist at Armstrong Media, with a salary exceeding my expectations and responsibilities that perfectly matched my career goals. My immediate excitement was tempered by ethical considerations. That evening, Gabriel and I had a lengthy discussion about the implications of working at the same company. I've been thinking about this constantly, I admitted. What if people assume I got the job because of our relationship? The hiring committee made their decision independently, Gabriel reassured me. Charlotte and Laura were emphatic about your qualifications being the deciding factor. But I understand your concerns. We discussed practical considerations, reporting structures, professional boundaries, and how we would handle company events. Gabriel had already spoken with the board about our relationship, implementing additional oversight protocols to ensure transparency. The most important question is whether this role aligns with your career goals, Gabriel said. Don't make this decision based on what others might think. Make it based on what's right for you professionally. After careful consideration, I accepted the position. Armstrong offered exactly the creative challenges and growth opportunities I'd been seeking, and I refused to let concerns about perception prevent me from advancing my career. My first day at Armstrong coincided with Vanessa's return from administrative leave. According to Thomas, she had completed intensive leadership and ethics training, acknowledged her unprofessional behavior, and committed to improving her management approach. Our first encounter in the office cafeteria was awkward, but surprisingly civil. Vanessa approached my table hesitantly, coffee cup in hand. Mind if I join you? She asked, a vulnerability in her voice I rarely heard. I gestured to the empty chair, and she sat down carefully, as if afraid of disturbing the fragile peace between us. Congratulations on the position, she said after a moment. I've heard your interview with Charlotte was impressive. Thank you, I replied, searching her face for signs of the usual resentment, but finding none. How are you doing with everything? Vanessa sighed, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. Humbled, honestly. The ethics review was thorough. Thomas was fair, but direct about how my behavior violated company values. She hesitated, then continued with visible effort. I owe you an apology, Elaine. Not just for the interview, but for a lot of things. Years of things. The sincere apology caught me off guard. I appreciate that, I said quietly. I think we both have healing to do when it comes to our relationship. I was wondering, Vanessa said, her voice uncharacteristically uncertain, if you might be willing to give me some feedback? On my management style, I mean. The training highlighted how my competitive approach might be undermining my effectiveness as a leader, and you've always been more perceptive about these things. The request for mentorship from my perpetually superior sister was perhaps the most shocking development yet. But it represented an opportunity to rebuild our relationship on new terms, as professionals who might learn from each other rather than rivals constantly measuring themselves against one another. I'd be happy to, I agreed. Maybe we could start with weekly coffee meetings? Vanessa's genuine smile, not the practiced, perfect one she used professionally, but a real expression of relief, felt like the first step toward a relationship we'd never before imagined possible. Over the following months, Both my career and my relationship with Vanessa developed in unexpected ways. My first major project at Armstrong exceeded engagement projections by 37%, earning recognition from clients and colleagues alike. I established strong working relationships within my team, careful never to mention my connection to Gabriel during working hours. Meanwhile, Vanessa and I maintained our weekly coffee meetings, gradually expanding the topics from professional feedback to more personal conversations. The competitive dynamic didn't disappear overnight. Decades of ingrained patterns don't change easily, but we developed tools for recognizing and redirecting those impulses when they surfaced. I'm trying this new thing where I celebrate others' successes instead of feeling threatened by them, Vanessa admitted during one of our sessions. It's surprisingly difficult, but I'm working on it. Even our parents noticed the change in our interactions during family gatherings. When I announced that Gabriel and I had set a wedding date, their response was genuine enthusiasm rather than the critical evaluation I'd expected. "We're just happy you found someone who appreciates you for exactly who you are," my mother said, embracing me warmly. Both our daughters are remarkable in their own ways. It was the kind of parental validation I'd stopped expecting years ago, acknowledgement that my path, though different from Vanessa's, was equally valid and worthy of respect. As Gabriel and I discussed wedding plans, one question loomed large. What role, if any, would Vanessa play in the ceremony? "She's your sister," Gabriel pointed out gently. "Despite your complicated history, she's still family." After considerable thought, I made a decision that would have seemed impossible months earlier. I asked Vanessa to be my maid of honor. Her shocked expression when I posed the question over dinner was almost comical. "Are you serious? After everything?" "We're building something new," I explained. "It won't erase the past, but maybe it can help shape a better future." Vanessa's eyes welled with tears, a vulnerability she would never have shown me before. "I'd be honored," she said quietly. "And I promise not to make it about me this time." The joke, acknowledging her past behavior with self-awareness rather than defensiveness, marked how far we'd come. For the first time in our adult lives, I felt hope that Vanessa and I might eventually become not just sisters by birth, but friends by choice. 6 months after that fateful interview, I stood by the window in my office at Armstrong Media, watching the city lights flicker on as dusk settled. My team had just delivered our quarterly results, exceeding targets across all metrics. The presentation to leadership had gone smoothly, with Laura Chin specifically commending the innovative approach my team had developed for our newest client. What struck me most during that meeting wasn't the professional recognition, gratifying as it was, but the moment Vanessa spoke up from her position at the conference table. The HR department's surveys show exceptionally high engagement from Elaine's team, she reported matter-of-factly. Their collaborative approach is becoming a model for other departments. No competitive edge, no subtle undermining, just a professional acknowledging another professional's accomplishments. The small nod she gave me afterward contained a world of meaning only we could fully appreciate. Our weekly coffee meetings had evolved into genuine conversations where we shared not just professional insights, but personal struggles and triumphs. The previous weekend, Vanessa had even joined Gabriel and me for dinner, bringing her new boyfriend Alan, a kind-hearted architect who seemed pleasantly bemused by the sisters' evolving relationship. "He keeps asking about our childhood," Vanessa had confided with a laugh. "I'm not sure how to explain that we're essentially creating our relationship from scratch as adults." With wedding preparations in full swing, Vanessa had embraced her role as maid of honor with characteristic thoroughness, but surprising sensitivity. Rather than taking over, she consistently asked what I wanted, offering her organizational skills as support rather than direction. "The florist confirmed the arrangements for the rehearsal dinner," she texted that morning. "And I scheduled your final dress fitting for next Thursday. Let me know if that works for your schedule." The wedding preparations symbolized our new dynamic, Vanessa contributing her strengths while respecting my vision, me accepting her help without fear of being overshadowed. It wasn't perfect, and we still had moments of tension when old patterns threatened to resurface, but we now had the awareness to recognize those moments and redirect them. Perhaps most surprising was the change in our parents' behavior. After years of unconsciously reinforcing our rivalry, they seemed to be making genuine efforts to appreciate each daughter's unique qualities. My father had actually called specifically to discuss my latest project at Armstrong, asking thoughtful questions about content strategy, without once comparing me to Vanessa. "We're proud of you, Elaine," he'd said before hanging up. "You've built something remarkable on your own terms." Those simple words, acknowledgement of my path's validity, meant more than he could possibly know. Gabriel knocked gently on my office door, breaking my reverie. We maintained strict professional boundaries at work, but occasional brief visits were acceptable within company guidelines. "Ready to head home?" he asked, keeping a professional distance despite the late hour when most colleagues had departed. As we walked to the elevator, he added quietly, "Natalie mentioned your team's presentation was exceptional, though I'd expect nothing less." His confidence in me had been unwavering from that first coffee shop conversation, not because he overestimated my abilities, but because he saw them clearly when I sometimes couldn't. In the parking garage, safely away from professional contexts, Gabriel took my hand. "Have you thought more about what we discussed last night?" The question referenced our ongoing conversation about my professional development. With my success in the Senior Content Strategist role, opportunities for advancement were emerging, including a potential new division focused on emerging digital platforms. "I'm going to apply for the director position," I decided aloud. "My track record supports it, and I have innovative ideas for the department's direction." "You'd be exceptional," Gabriel agreed simply. "The review committee will make their decision based entirely on qualifications." The fact that I no longer questioned whether I deserved such opportunities marked my own internal growth. The insecurity bred by years of comparison to Vanessa had finally begun to fade, replaced by confidence in my professional judgment and abilities. Later that evening, as Gabriel and I finalized our wedding guest list, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past year. From unemployed and doubting my worth to engaged, professionally successful, and building a healthier relationship with my sister. The transformation seemed almost unbelievable. The defining moment hadn't been Gabriel walking into that interview room, though that certainly catalyzed the changes that followed. The real turning point was the conversation with Vanessa in her apartment, the first time we'd spoken honestly as adults rather than performing our assigned roles in a lifelong competition. Learning to stand up for myself professionally while offering genuine reconciliation personally had required balancing accountability with compassion. Vanessa had needed to face consequences for her unprofessional behavior, but she'd also needed the opportunity to grow from that experience rather than being defined by it. The lesson wasn't about karma or comeuppance, satisfying as those might briefly feel. It was about having the courage to break destructive patterns, whether they're family dynamics that have existed for decades or professional insecurities that limit our potential. Sometimes the most difficult person to stand up to isn't a bully in the workplace or a critical parent. It's the voice inside that tells us we're not enough, that we need to prove our worth through constant comparison to others. Silencing that voice requires not just external validation, but internal conviction that our unique path has inherent value. As I prepare to walk down the aisle next month with Gabriel waiting at the altar and Vanessa standing beside me as maid of honor, I wonder how many other family relationships remain trapped in dynamics established in childhood, waiting for the courage to imagine something different. What would change in your life if you challenged the role you've been assigned in your family story? How might your relationships transform if you refuse to accept the way it's always been as the way it must continue to be? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life stories about family dynamics, professional growth, and personal transformation. Share this video with someone who might need encouragement to break free from limiting relationships or self-doubt. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, sometimes the most powerful change begins with believing you deserve better.